Hey everyone, it's your Rocket Rack guide, Josh. Thanks for joining me for this next video in our series of Rocket Rack Configurator tutorials. I hope you'll check out my last video where we discussed how to create trapeze assemblies, but today we're going to spend some time creating single post assemblies inside the configurator. So let's get started. All right, we are back in the Rocket Rack Configurator. As you can see under Properties for this project, I've got my configurator example going here, and I've already outlined my project number, customer, contact, etc. And under Line Items, you can see the trapeze assembly I made for my last video. It's still here. We've got the type of assembly it is, when it was created, and I can go in here and export the BOM for that material right here and make edits and queue the output for the PDF. I can also duplicate it or trash it. And that's all here for us with every line item that we create. So for this instance, we're going to want to go to Add and Single Post Mount. And it's going to take us directly to a single post mount assembly here. And under Assembly Details, same deal as last time. You want to fill these out based on what type of assembly this is, where it's going to go in your facility, and any special notes that you want to add based on what you're needing here. So I'm going to go ahead and fill those out, and then we can get started. All right, so I filled in the assembly details, and as you can see, I've got the area or room as the oven room, and I've chosen Power Supply 1 as the name of this group specifically. And I've added date required, which is when this material will need to be on site for this installation to happen. The first thing for a single post mount assembly is the size option. So under overall height, we have some predetermined heights that we offer straight from the factory. We've got 48 inches through 120 inches. And so there's some really great variety here based on what you need for your application. I'm going to go with a 60-inch post, and that should be good enough for what we're wanting to do here. And again, visual tools, you can show height dimensions and slot dimensions. I've talked about this in one of my other videos, and this is just going to show you height of things as you're going. All right, let's get started. So to add things, we can go to Add and click Extension Arm Assembly. And this is going to represent a couple of different rack options for us. And as you can see, it's populated right at the bottom of our post. And it's red because there is interference. As I've mentioned a couple times, the configurator has real-world interference built into the program so that anytime something that wouldn't work in real life occurs inside the configurator, it turns that component red. And it tells us that it needs to change. So to do so, we'll go to Vertical Extension Arm under the Part Children tab here on the left. And we will change the elevation, or how high up it is on the post, so that we can get rid of this error. Let's go with 10. Okay, so it is 10 inches up on the post now, and there is no error. We are good to go. All right, so first things first here, we need to determine what the extension arm type we're going to use is. We have a couple options over here under the Edit tab. We've got a vertical extension arm, a double mount bracket, or a horizontal extension arm. The vertical extension arm, which we have right now, is going to support conduit or basket tray that is running vertically up and down like that. We've got the double mount bracket, which is basically two vertical extension arms, one on each end, so you can run conduit and basket tray vertically on both sides of the post. And then we have a horizontal extension arm, and this will support conduit or basket tray running horizontally. And of course, we have the option to flip the orientation of the rack based on our installation needs. I'm going to go, for now, with a vertical extension arm. And we can change the slot size from 6.5 inches to 10.5 inches. Those are the two standard slot sizes for all types of extension arms. And you can change the rotation offset. This is going to be how it is rotated around the post. So right now it's set at 90, but if we wanted to set it to 115, for example, you can see it just reflected to 115 degrees. All right, so let's populate this rack with some components. So we're going to go to Add, And let's say we're going to put a pipe clamp assembly on here. All right, so it is populated there onto the rack for us to see. As you can see, it's also got a hygienic spacer already added to this assembly. So that's perfect for hygienic purposes. If we want to make changes to this pipe clamp specifically, as always, we need to go to the Part Children tab, click on Pipe Clamp, and here we can change its properties. We can change the clamp type from a sanitary hinged clamp for conduit to an industrial two-piece clamp for conduit. For our purposes, we'll want to stay sanitary. So there you go. And this will be reflected in the bill of materials, adding this sanitary clamp here. Let's change the diameter to 1.5 inches. There you go. We can change the rotation for whatever purpose. Maybe your conduit's not running exactly straight. So we can say, if we wanted to change it to 15, you can see it's rotated 15 degrees there. Very nice. I'm going to reset it back to 0 just for our purposes. And finally, the standoff type. Right now it's set to standard, but you could switch it to variable, which makes the spacer a taller length to separate it from the rack a bit more. Or you can have it mounted directly to the rack, and that removes the spacer. So you can see there, it's mounted directly to the rack. Let's change this back to standard just so you can see it. Position offset, we can move it along the rack however we would like. Let's go with 3, and that's actually not valid. It's giving us that real-world interference that I mentioned, and so we're going to need to adjust that. Position offset, say 4. Will 4 work for us? Absolutely it will. And there you go. We've got our sanitary hinged clamp there. And if we wanted to duplicate it, say we've got another run coming down on the same side, we can go up to duplicate, and it's going to populate it right on top of the existing clamp. So all we have to do is adjust the position. We'll change the position for that one to 8. Or if we think that's too close or not in the right spot, we can move it to 10. And say this one needs to actually stand off a bit more. So we'll switch it to a variable standoff. And there you have it. We've got our 2 clamps on there. Perfect. And now we get to something that I think is so totally unique to the configurator, which we have the duplicate option to duplicate specific components, but when you're working with post-mount racks, you can duplicate entire racks along with the components that are already on them. So to do that, we need to go back to the level of the vertical extension arm, hit duplicate, and it'll populate an identical rack right on top of the existing one, just like we duplicate things every other time, and we'll just have to change the elevation. So let's change this one to 20, and there you go. We have an exact duplicate of the rack that we just populated. We didn't have to do any extra work to create a duplicate of this. It's all right there for us. And now if we need to change specific things on that extension arm, we're already on that level, extension arm of elevation 20. So we can go into the pipe clamps and change the specifics, but we can leave it this way here just to show we've got a run happening on this side. And perhaps it's okay to support this a little bit higher than 20. So we can go with 30. And as you can see, it shifts it all up like that for us. And say we want to get it one more time. We want to support this run one more time on this pole. Let's hit duplicate and change the elevation to 55. All right, but let's say we're not done there. We can use the rest of this real estate on this post for really whatever we need. So if we go back out to the single post mount level, let's choose Add Extension Arm Assembly, and we'll click Vertical Extension Arm 0. We're going to need to adjust this because it's interfering with the ground. And so let's change the elevation of this one to 15, and you got to click out of the box for it to update. And it's set to the rotation offset of 90, as you can see there. But let's change this one to a double mount bracket. And let's change the rotation offset for this one to 0. All right, so now with this double post mount bracket here, we can have 2 runs of conduit or basket tray coming down from either side of the post, while we also have the extension arm supporting this run coming down on this side of the post. Okay, for this double mount bracket, let's change the slot size to 10.5 inches. It'll really maximize our mounting space here if we have the room for it in our facility. And let's go to Add and hit Cable Tray Clamp. And here we've got a cable tray clamp for us to secure our basket tray hygienically. And to move that along the slot, we'll go to cable tray clamp assembly 1 and change the position offset to whatever we want. Let's say 7. There you go. And if we wanted to duplicate it and put one identically on the other side of the double mount bracket, we'll hit duplicate. It's on top of the existing one. And so let's put in a -7. The negative will reflect it over to the other side of the bracket. So there you go. As you can see here, we've got 2 cable tray clamps and the mounting hardware that goes with those all shown on the double mount bracket. And it's not interfering with the conduit run we have on the other side. Very cool. And last but not least, let's just make sure that this cable tray is supported all the way up the post. So we're going to go to double mount bracket 15, hit duplicate, and duplicate the entire rack, which means it's also duplicating the cable tray clamps in the exact same positions. So all we have to do now is raise the elevation of this double mount bracket to, say, 45. And there you go. We're not interfering in any way. So if we're happy with this, we're all done. Let's go up to Actions and hit Queue Outputs. And this is going to get the PDF drawing ready for us to review. The job has been queued and you can see its progress under Jobs. And once it's queued up, it will be available for us to view under Documents. But while we're waiting for the single post mount to finish exporting, we can go to Export BOM. And that'll download the bill of material for us in spreadsheet form. And I just want to point out how this looks over here. If we go back out the single post mount and we hit bill of materials, everything that we have populated into this assembly is here, including if it shows up in multiple quantities. All right, and here's the PDF generated out of the configurator. Right here on page 1, we've got an overview with the measurements listed of all of the racks that we've chosen, as well as some foot panel detail here in the top right corner. If we go down to the next page, we'll see an entire parts list of everything that we ordered with all the quantities and all of the part numbers, as well as the weight of each part. All right, and now we get into the sub-assemblies where we go rack by rack and see what we've selected to place on each rack. So here is the top rack, rack 1E. We've got our 2 clamps here, one with a standard spacer and one with a variable spacer, and it's all listed here in the BOM, everything you need to create this specific rack. Now the next pages are for each of the other extension arms that we did that were exact copies of those. And then we get to our 2 double post mount assemblies with the 2 cable tray clamps and everything listed that you need to put this together. All right, we've downloaded the spreadsheet of our bill of materials right out of the configurator. So you can see the date required is here. We've got all the quantities we need and the part numbers along with their description and their assembly group and areas or rooms where they belong. Well, that's it for this video on how to create single post mount assemblies in the configurator. Now it's your turn to play in the configurator and see what you can come up with. And I hope you'll stick around for the next video in this tutorial series about how to create double post mount assemblies in the configurator. See you next time.